Drake May and Christian Watson are the top fantasy sleepers for week 7. We discuss best sleepers and DFS plays on today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Michelle Magdziuk, and when I'm not doing this, I'm a researcher and fantasy analyst with NFL Network.
And I'm your other co-host, Vinnie Iyer, and when I'm not doing this, I'm writing about NFL fantasy and betting for sportingnews.com.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, we're on to our Friday show, last show of the week, last show to get you prepped for week 7. We've gone through all of our rankings. We helped you with the waivers earlier in the week. And now it's time, if you're still looking to fill out that roster, we have some sleepers for you at each position. And you can find these guys on a lot of waivers as well. So starting with a guy we've been talking about all week, and I'm sorry if you've heard it too much, but we're going to talk about him one more time. Our sleeper of the week at quarterback, it's Drake May against the Jaguars.
Yeah, last week wasn't so good because we had Daniel Jones, and I don't know what happened to the Giants' offense. I don't know what happened to the Bengals' offense. We thought that was going to be a high-scoring game. It was not. This game could be a wild one. It is 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time kickoff in London, so we'll see if Drake May can fare well against the Jaguars, who are just hemorrhaging points to quarterbacks, wide receivers. Everyone gets a job done. Kyren Williams just threw 4 touchdown passes on this team as a rookie. So that's why we feel confident, especially because it all lines up. Drake May had 3 TD passes last week. He ran for 40 yards, so he can supplement his production there. The matchup is just too good to ignore. And look, as I mentioned, and you probably heard this all throughout the week, and that's good. That means you've been listening to every show. This is the year of the rookie quarterback. Look at Bo Nix on Thursday night. Like, he's going nuts, running and doing his thing. So I think you'll see more of that from Drake May. Matchup is just too good, and I think this little sneaky motivation that Mac Jones is on the other sideline. Drake May wants to show, look, this is why they drafted me, to replace you. I'm the first-round guy that you want. So I love the Drake May, and I think he's going to be motivated. I like the fact that he was aggressive and made the plays last week.
He did. He was throwing down the field. He was running. That was great. Every week this season, the quarterback that faced the Jaguars finished no worse than the quarterback 11 on the week. And Deshaun Watson finished as the quarterback 11. That was the worst one.
That's crazy.
Deshaun Watson, yes. Tua finished as the quarterback 8. CJ Stroud, quarterback 7. You had Caleb Williams and Josh Allen finish as the quarterback 1 against them. Joe Flacco as the quarterback 4. They are just giving away points to the quarterback position. And we brought up Demario Douglas. We're not going to have him as our sleeper of the week at wide receiver. We would, but we've talked about him enough. Start Demario Douglas. He is May's top target. But getting into our sleeper of the week at wide receiver, it's going to be Christian Watson against the Texans. And this should be a high-scoring game, right? We could say that, and sometimes these games aren't, but like the Texans and the Packers both have great offenses. Their defense can be passed on. This should be a very high-scoring game, and Love loves to throw touchdowns, right? I mean, he's throwing touchdowns left and right. Watson has come down with a touchdown in both games he played with Jordan Love this season. And the Texans have allowed 12 passing touchdowns this season, the second most in the NFL. So everything's lining up to a big Christian Watson game in this matchup.
Yeah, the legend of Christian Watson as everyone's favorite fantasy player continues here. He's one of those guys we want to do so well because he's got so much talent, speed, size, ability to score touchdowns. He did it early in his career. He just needs to stay healthy. And whatever experimental thing he did in the offseason to get healthy, it's working for now. You know that he can get hurt at any time. But when he's healthy, we have to prioritize when he's healthy and out there, because when he is, he tends to produce and enjoy it. It could be just one game. He could just be coming up lame with a hamstring after mysterious hamstring, and that's it. But for this week only, as he was last week, I think he's a good play this week, especially with Jane Reed a little bit banged up. We'll see about what they do with really Romeo Doubs on the other side. But this matchup is really good for Watson downfield, so I'm excited for it. And let's hope this game lives up to expectations for fantasy and reality. I love it. Jordan Love versus CJ Stroud should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I want this game to be like 40 to
Yeah.
35. Let's go.
Yeah.
A game that will not be high scoring, I don't think anyways. It's the Steelers versus the Jets. But to beat the Jets, you have to run on them, right? So our sleeper running back of the week, no, it's not Najee Harris. He broke out last week as soon as we all sat him. And Najee Harris is a fine play this week. But we're going with Jaylen Warren, the other running back in the Steelers backfield. He didn't get to play much last week. He was just coming back from injury after a few weeks, taking off. Only played 36% of snaps. That should increase this week. Russell Wilson's going to be starting his first game in the system. They have to run. Like, you cannot beat the Jets running the ball. Run the ball. Ray Davis just ran all over this Jets team. There's no reason Jaylen Warren can't, and he should get a lot of the dump offs from Russell Wilson as well. So Warren's a very, very big sleeper. Like, don't play him unless you absolutely need to, but I won't be surprised if he puts up double-digit fantasy points this week.
Yeah, you made a good point earlier in the week, and if you guys were listening, you heard Michelle say that Russell Wilson has tended to throw to running backs a little bit more later in his career as he can't move as much. So that's part of it. Is like, if your legs cannot be a check down the way that Justin Fields has legs that are checked down, you're going to tend to get rid of the ball quickly. And Jaylen Warren can do that. The Jets have very good pass rush. We know that. So the Steelers don't want to sit back there behind that offensive line and have them tee off. So what you have a lot of short passes. You saw last week, you mentioned Ray Davis as well, Michelle. He was very effective as a receiver, so they can get him involved. They need to get more people involved in the passing game because it's going to be a tough matchup for George Pickens, whether he gets DJ Reed or Sauce Gardner. It's going to be hard for Pat Freiermuth, so they need to get Warren involved in the passing game. So I do like his supplementary running, but I do like his complementary receiving a little bit more this week with the ability to get open against that Jets front. That's what they give up, and that's where you have to attack them, and I think that's where the Steelers will, as Warren can be more unleashed this week as he doesn't have to worry about the injury.
Yeah. And again, Najee Harris should be a good play in this game as well. But I'm sure whenever we're going to trust Najee again this week, and he's going to disappoint. But if the Steelers want any chance in this game, they should be running it 30, 40 times in this matchup. So they should both be able to have a good game. And then to finish off our sleepers here at the tight end position, we're going with Zach Ertz. It's not flashy. It's not sexy in the slightest. But if you need 8 to 10 points in half PPR, he's your guy, right? He's getting consistently 5 targets, anywhere from 5 to 8 targets, anywhere from 30 to 60 yards. But last week he got 68 receiving yards on 4 targets. The Panthers just let Kyle Pitts put up 70 receiving yards against them on just 3 receptions. Like, there's no one on this Panthers defense, right? Zach Ertz, like, if you had to predict a line, like, I would go with 5 for 65. But at the tight end position, if you need someone to plug in this week, that's all you need.
Yeah, welcome to the top 12, Zach Ertz. It's just a revolving door here, but when you look at it, I think that Jaden Daniels has kind of found his guys, right, for the most part. He's kind of split on who do I trust more in the slot between Olamide Zaccheaus and Luke McCaffrey. He knows he's going deep to Terry McLaurin. He's got that part down. Now he's got to find another one of his reliable guys. And the veteran that's going to come through on a lot of those intermediate routes that they like to run with Cliff Kingsbury has been Zach Ertz. And I know there was a lot of buzz about Ben Sennett before, but the rookie's not anywhere near the field right now. Ertz is still producing. I think we kind of thought he was washed when he left Philadelphia, when he was good in Arizona. He's good again in Washington. He's just a professional kind of route running tight end. He's just going to go out there and make plays. So I love it this week. The Panthers cannot cover him. The Commanders, I think, are going to be able to move the ball well. What I don't want is them to go nuts rushing in this game where there's not enough passing. The Commanders, although I think, are smart enough to say we're going to come out aggressive, get a lead, and then we can run in the second half.
Yeah, and hopefully they run with Jaden Daniels a lot if that happens, right?
Yeah.
Spoiler alert, he might be in my FanDuel lineup, Jaden Daniels, that is. But we are going to get into our DFS talk now. In our next segment, we're going to hit on our favorite PrizePicks picks of the week. And then also we'll finish with our FanDuel lineup as well. If you don't play DFS, that's okay. Either, we'll let you know how you can join, or we're still just talking fantasy, right? These guys are guys we like this week, so it's still going to help you set your fantasy lineups. We will get into all of that right after a quick break.
All right, this episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you by one of our newer sponsors, that's Arena Club. For most of us who like to collect cards, the idea of spending $2,000 or more on a special card, such as Luka Doncic, Ellie De La Cruz, or a Patrick Mahomes rookie card, which is, of course, very rare, just isn't in the cards. I love collecting, but that's some serious money to drop. Thanks to slab packs from arenaclub.com, now it's possible to score gem mints for a fraction of their retail price. That's right. Every card that I listed there was hit from last week's Arena Club slab pack drop. Arena Club is the only repack that provides real value, a complete view of all the possible cards, and a clear hit rate for each one. Arena Club slab packs are revolutionizing the repack game with transparency. And the grading process is accurate from Arena Club, fast and transparent as well, with the full grade rationale provided an explanation of how your card is valued. So a lot of good stuff there. Whether you're buying, selling, trading, or displaying, Arena Club is the card collecting platform you have to check out. Right now, you can get 10% off your first slab pack or card purchase by going to arenaclub.com/LockedOnNFL. That's lowercase all. They're Locked On NFL, and use the code Locked On NFL, LOCKEDON NFL. That's arenaclub.com/LockedOnNFL, code Locked On NFL for 10% off your first purchase.
This episode is also brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps, on PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. What is also my favorite part of this platform is that they're the only daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy so that your lineups stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. So if your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return, PrizePicks still keeps your picks alive. Vinnie and I will give you our 6 favorite PrizePicks picks of the week in our upcoming segment. If you want to play along with us, all you have to do is download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONNFL on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even have to win on that $5 bet. PrizePicks, run your game. All right, we're getting into our PrizePicks picks of the week. We've done really, really well the last couple of weeks. We've gone 11 for 12 over the last 2 weeks. The only one wrong was the Jahmyr Gibbs touchdown that I needed last week against Dallas. It's insane he didn't get it because they put up like 1 gazillion points against Dallas, but it is what it is. David Montgomery stole them all. But let's try again. Let's try to go 6 for 6 this week. What's your top PrizePicks pick of the week?
Yeah, I mean, I always give you a quarterback rushing special, and this one looked like it was a bad anomaly when I looked at it with PrizePicks. It was Geno Smith at 12.5 rushing yards. Now, I would maybe even go up on a demon pick on this one because he's facing the Falcons. Why is this significant? The Falcons give up the most rushing yards per game, almost 38 yards to quarterbacks. Geno Smith has been taken off and running. Part of it is the nature of their defense that kind of protects things downfield, so that opens up some field to run. And Geno Smith has been very active taking off and running this year. So I love it there. 12.5 rushing yards more. I'm feeling that one a lot, Michelle. So I love it. That's why it was my easy number one, your rushing quarterback special there for PrizePicks this week.
You're weirdly good at those. So everyone take note on that Geno Smith rushing yards. My top pick, I'm going with Kyren Williams, more than 90.5 rushing yards against the Raiders. I expect Kyren Williams to be the running back 1 overall this week in this matchup. They should be running a ton. The Rams and the Raiders, who basically just given up on their season. But the last 3 weeks, Kyren Williams, or last 3 games, I should say, because the Rams just had a bye week. Last 3 Rams games, Kyren Williams has had 102, 94, and 89 rushing yards. Is averaging over 22 carries per game over the Rams' last 3 games. And his efficiency started terrible, but it's gone up the last 2 games. It averaged 4.6 yards per carry the last week. The last game he played in the 4.9 in week 4. So he's not struggling anymore like he was to start the season. The Raiders are allowing 5.2 yards per carry to running backs this season, the 3rd most in the NFL, and they just let Najee Harris run for 106 rushing yards. Like, Najee never does that. Kyren Williams is easily putting up over 90 rushing yards against the Raiders.
Yeah, I also like they're coming off a bye, so he's well rested. Load him up with the touches. So that's how you're going to win this game. And the game script should be positive. They should be playing from ahead at home against this Raiders kind of pathetic team right now without Devontae Adams. So I love that one. Even with a high number, Michelle, I think that's a very good call by you. Now I've got one of our guys again, You probably are sick of hearing about this guy, but Demario Douglas. I mean, I'm just going to emphasize he's a good play in a lot of things you're doing this week. And he's a good play in PrizePicks as well because his number set at 47.5 receiving yards there against the Jaguars. I like them more easily on this one. He's going to be involved. You actually look at their coverage, they're actually not as bad as you think on the outside, but they're really bad inside. Darnell Savage is usually the slot corner, and he is a converted safety. He used to play with the Packers, so he's not the best at doing that. He's just out of position a lot. So I like the short passes to Demario Douglas. I think they'll feed him often. And look, he doesn't have to average a lot per reception, right? If he averages 9 to 10 yards and gets 5 catches, you're golden here to get to 50 yards. So I love that number. And I think it's going to go up here. So take advantage of that while you can.
Yeah, we've been talking up Demario Douglas this whole week. He's a great play in a flex spot or even a wide receiver 2 spot. I expect him to have a really nice day, especially in full PPR leagues. But hey, he scored his first career receiving touchdown last week with Drake May. So maybe his second one is coming this week as well. My second favorite prop for DFS for on PrizePicks is J.K. Dobbins more than 73.5 rushing yards against the Cardinals. He's getting all the work with Gus Edwards on IR. He got 25 carries last year. No other Chargers running backs saw more than 4. The Panthers are allowing the second most rushing yards per game to running backs this season. The Cardinals are, not the Panthers. Cardinals are allowing the second most rushing yards per game to running backs this season. They let David Montgomery run for 105 yards, Brian Robinson Jr. 101, Jordan Mason 89, Jahmyr Gibbs in that same game with Montgomery 83. Like, they're just giving up rushing yards left and right. And I like this game. The Cardinals can't do anything on offense. They should be able to just run a ton like they want to do the Chargers, and it's all going to go to J.K. Dobbins. So I feel really good about 73.5 rushing yards. He had 96 last week, and that was in a tough matchup against the Broncos.
Yeah, so I guess you're going Los Angeles running back.
Yeah.
So that's easy to remember. If you're looking for those picks on the rushing yards, go Williams and Dobbins. I like that. Again, I like it that it's on Monday night. You can get excited for that game and have some action there and look at him go nuts against the Cardinals. So love those 2 picks. Now I'm going back. Speaking of Los Angeles, I'm going back to that Rams-Raiders game here for my third pick. It is Brock Bowers. And I actually really love Brock Bowers this week. I think I had him at number 2 at tight end, only because I think George Kittle is also going to go off this week. But it's interchanging these guys week in and week out. I mean, those 2 guys have really stood out in tight end as much as you can, right, with the rest of the position kind of trying to find its way. But Bowers against 60.5 receiving yards. That is a very modest number, given how much Bowers has been involved in this offense. Jacoby Myers is banged up. Devontae Adams is gone. They're throwing to guys named Tucker and Turner. Those are the other guys that are out there. You don't have anybody, and the Rams stink against a tight end. They just do. I mean, they don't have very good safety play. They had Ernest Jones, who's a decent cover guy. He's gone. So, like, now it's just, like, opened up. I mean, this team used to be really good at covering the middle of the field. It is not anymore. So this is a perfect matchup for Brock Bowers. They should be behind. You should be getting a lot of volume from Aiden O'Connell. Aiden O'Connell is a dinker and a dunker. He hates throwing downfield. So Bowers is going to be open all day. And I think he could get like 10 to 12 catches in this one. And if he does that, he's going to easily clear 60.5 receiving yards.
Yeah, this seems like an easy one. Brock Bowers should be the focal point of this offense. It doesn't mean it's going to turn into a lot of touchdowns because who knows how many they score, but it will turn into a lot of yards. He'll be great for half PPR and PPR leagues, and he's going to have I just don't see how the Rams keep him to under 61 receiving yards this week. So love that. My last one's Jameson Williams, more than 49.5 receiving yards against the Vikings. That's just way too low. I'm also going to give you another one with him. Longest reception of 21.5 receiving yards. Hey, he's averaging 22.8 yards per reception this year. And they have his longest reception of the game at 21.5. That's lower than his average of yards per reception, which is just crazy. So I love them more. He has 7 receptions of 22 plus yards this year. Only Jamar Chase and Nico Collins have more with 8. But then also that 49.5 receiving yards is just way too low. He's had at least 76 receiving yards in all but one game this season. The Vikings are a really good defense at getting turnovers, but they're still hemorrhaging yards. Like, they're allowing 209 receiving yards per game to the wide receiver position this season. That's the second most in the NFL, behind only the Lions. 3 wide receivers had at least 60 receiving yards against them in week 3. In week 4, 2 wide receivers had at least 75 receiving yards against them. Week 5, Garrett Wilson had 101 receiving yards against them. And then they had a bye in week 6. But that's just too low, 49.5, and then longest reception of 21.5 for Jameson Williams.
Yeah, that's the one thing everyone says, oh, the Vikings matchup is tough. It is in one aspect in terms of trying to win the game and other things like turnovers for your quarterbacks. But in terms of giving up yardage, they give up yardage. But that's the design of the defense under Brian Flores. They will give you the yardage. But like we know with the Patriots back in the day, and Flores was with the Patriots, they're about just containing the damage, winning situationally. And that's what the Vikings care about more. They'll give up the yards to James Williams if they can stop in the red zone or keep it from being a long touchdown. So I love that pick by you. And it's a great matchup, again, for all the wide receivers in that game for sure. So yeah, as Michelle mentioned, the Vikings and Lions have both struggled against receivers. So those are some really good picks. I think I feel confident about both of our picks this week. So love that. And we will get in our final segment a little bit more DFS with the FanDuel lineup. So we'll give you that advice right after this quick break. Hey, speaking of FanDuel, this is an episode, as usual, sponsored by FanDuel Sportsbook. It's America's #1 sportsbook. Now, I do a picks against the spread column every week at Sporting News, and my lock this week that I feel really good about is the Buffalo Bills. They are facing the Titans. They're 8.5-point favorites in that one. I like them to win 33-13. Just going over, by the way, that total as well. So like that. And you can look at the action that you want to get in on FanDuel Sportsbook. It is week 7, so you should be getting in on the action before the second half of the season. You can get a big return on FanDuel. That's America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can go check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your pregame bets. So a lot of good stuff there that you can check out all Sunday and Monday night long with the doubleheader this week. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, Michelle, we talked about FanDuel and what you can do there at the sportsbook. Now we're going to talk about FanDuel DFS, and we'll look at the main slate here and reveal our picks as we always do to close our Friday show and the week of shows. So let's get right to it, Michelle. Let's reveal your quarterback for the main slate on Sunday.
I paid up. I'm going with Jaden Daniels at 9,100, one of the most expensive quarterbacks on the week for a good reason against the Panthers. Yes, they might run a lot, but Jaden Daniels should run a lot as well. But this Panthers defense is not going to be able to stop the Commanders and Jaden Daniels. So I'm willing to pay up for him this week.
That's good because you're going to get the points whether he passes or runs. You should be in good shape there. Well, my guy I did use already in PrizePicks, but it's Geno Smith. I like the price here, 7,600. I think he's going to have to throw quite a bit. This could be a sneaky, high-scoring game. We looked at the Packers and Texans game. We have the Chiefs and 49ers. This might be a game that also goes nuts. It's in Atlanta. I think it's going to be a lot of passing for the Seahawks as they try to catch up with the Falcons or vice versa in this one. So 7,600, locking that in. And Geno, run like wild. Well, let's double up here.
He's going to have to run because I feel like the Falcons secondary are pretty good at stopping quarterbacks. So we'll see with that one. I almost went with Kirk Cousins in that same matchup, but decided to pay up with Jaden Daniels. My running backs, I already talked about it. I think Kyren Williams is going to be a top dog this week, so I'm willing to pay up with him too. If I'm paying up for a quarterback and a running back, I'm going to have some bad options down here in a little bit. But I'm going with Kyren Williams at 8,600, and then Alexander Madison at 6,100. One of the cheaper options, but he's getting a lot of the work. Yeah, Zamir White might be back, but he's been bad. Madison's been used as a receiver as well. Without Devontae Adams there, like he's going to keep getting used, and he has all 3 of the Raiders rushing touchdowns this year. So going with Madison.
Yeah, I'm going to offer a caveat with my second running back, but first I'll say my first one is also Kyren Williams. I paid up to get him at 8,600. So we've already explained why we like him to dominate matchup against the Raiders. Now, My second back, I might have to pivot based on some injury news, but I'm not feeling that Devin Singletary is going to play. So I'm putting Tyrone Tracy Jr. I thought about Alexander Madison, but I have him at 6,200 against the Eagles. The Eagles are okay as a defense. They should be a little bit better this week, but I still think the Giants can run him, and Tyrone Tracy is just good. Like, if you look at the metrics, he's a very good receiving back. So if they get behind, that's okay. If they can stay in the game, he's going to make something happen out of nothing. So I love it. How can you not like this kid after the last 2 weeks? So Tyrone Tracy is my way to save money with Kyren Williams this week, as you have Madison.
Yeah, I like Tyrone Tracy better if Devin Singletary sits out than Alexander Madison this week. So that's a good pickup by you. My wide receivers, none of them are flashy here, but I do have a flashy one in my flex, but I'll wait for that one. But my 3 wide receivers are Jameson Williams. Already talked about him. I think he's going to have a huge game against the Vikings. Romeo Dobbs. So we talked about Christian Watson, but for the same reasons I like Dobbs, right? Jordan Love's throwing a lot of touchdowns. Dobbs came down with 2 touchdowns last week, and the Texans are giving up a ton of touchdowns this year. So all 3 things line up for him, and he was on the cheaper end. And then my cheapest play of the week is Jordan Whittington, the 6th-round rookie of the Rams. I know Cooper Kupp's coming back, but he plays the Puka Nacua role. So he's still going to be involved. I think he's going to be the second target in this offense. We'll see how much they have to throw. But if they do, I think Whittington can come down with a touchdown, come down with 70 yards. So I think at his cheap cost at 5,300, he can come through.
Yeah, I like those a lot here. I did go for one guy that I think is going to come through consistently, attached to Jaden Daniels. Terry McLaurin, still rather cheap at 7,200. So he's my wide receiver 1, so to speak, in this lineup. Then I had to go a little bit cheaper. I'm going Jordan Addison at 6,300. This is a good matchup for him against the Lions. So I do like the fact that he can get open, and in better matchups, he can come through. So I do like Sam Darnold throw to him. You think the coverage attention will go to Justin Jefferson. So Addison should see some favorable coverage in that game. And then I went to Wan'Dale Robinson at 6,600. Again, I know I have 2 Giants in the lineup. It's always a little dicey, but I think they're correlated plays here, because if it's a shorter passing game for Daniel Jones, getting the ball out quickly, and Malik Neighbors just coming back from a concussion, drawing some attention downfield, I think Wan'Dale can be busy and maybe find the end zone again.
Yeah, love all of those. For my flex play, I have the same guy that you have as a wide receiver. It's Terry McLaurin. I had to stack that up with my Jaden Daniels.
Okay.
So, and like you said, he is he was surprisingly cheap, but 7,200 is not near like the top range. And Terry McLaurin's putting up points. We both have him ranked as a top 7 guy this week. So happily spending that for him. And then for my tight end, I also spent up a bit at Brock Bowers at 7,000. I think he was the 2nd most expensive tight end this week. As you've already mentioned, who else is getting targeted in this Raiders offense? Brock Bowers could get 10 to 15 targets this week. So down to pay up for him as well.
Well, let's have a dramatic pause for my flex wide receiver, because it's also Jameson Williams. So we both have Terry McLaurin and Jameson Williams at different positions this week. And shocker, my tight end is also Brock Bowers. So we're endorsing a lot of these guys. It should be some easy calls for you in the lineup. Yeah, I have Brock Bowers as well. He's just too good. I'll just quickly reveal my defense. Look, I don't have a lot of money. I'm hoping that they force turnovers in this game. So I'm going with the Minnesota Vikings at 3,900. Just hope that Jared Goff throws some interceptions. The Vikings can score. So I also was curious to see if we had the same thoughts here.
Yeah, I have the exact same Vikings. I have the Vikings at 3,900. So that means we have Kyren Williams the same, Jameson Williams, Terry McLaurin, and Brock Bowers in the Vikings defense. So we have the same mindset this week.
Yeah, and these lineups, we do not talk about them. So these are just on the fly. We came up with the same. So if we both like them, that's a stamp of approval. If one of us likes them, we can think about it. But if we both give our stamp of approval, you got to like it. So I'm glad.
Like I said about the Vikings, it doesn't matter that they're giving up yards. They're getting so many turnovers. The Vikings have been such a dominant fantasy defense despite giving up a lot of yards. You play the Vikings and they're so cheap. So love it.
Yeah.
To run down my lineup here, you got Jaden Daniels at quarterback, Kyren Williams and Alexander Madison at running back, Jameson Williams, Jordan Whittington, and Romeo Dobbs at wide receiver, as well as Terry McLaurin sitting there in my flex, and then Brock Bowers at tight end in the Vikings defense.
Yeah, so I've got Geno Smith at quarterback, Kyren Williams, Tyrone Tracy as my backs, Terry McLaurin, Jordan Addison, Wan'Dale Robinson as the receivers, as well as Jameson Williams in the flex, and then Brock Bowers and the Vikings defense. So Very similar lineups. Either Michelle's analysis rubbing off on me or my analysis rubbing off on her, but it doesn't really matter because it all means you are the big winner here by listening to the show and then knowing our analysis is right there for you for the taking. It's here every week. We're here for you every week. We'll be here all throughout the season doing the same thing, and we'll start again on Monday.
Yeah, so that is it for today's episode. That's it for our prep for week 7. We wish you guys all the best luck. Thank you to you all for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. We will talk to you on Monday. Bye, y'all.